Welcome to On the Issues. I'm your host, Nicholas Balsi. For today's show, we're here with the New Jersey Commissioner for Personnel and the Vice Chairman for the State Ethics Committee. So how did your experience at CUNY and Rutgers Law School shape your career in public service?
Going to a public university, particularly the city university system in New York, at a time in the 70s when they created open admission, which was they essentially allowed anyone who had a decent high school, they didn't use SATs. It was almost like the democratization of education, of higher education in New York City. And it offered us an opportunity to go to a real open environment that stress values like the value of sound communication, of principles to your fellow man. So it was the 70s. It was a much different time. There wasn't that pressure to go out and get a job. You know, we all thought we were going to change the world. When I came to Rutgers, at Rutgers I found first of all, I went at night, so that was basically almost a commuter relationship, although I'd still have nightmares of being a night student. But the interchange, the quality of the professors, their background, the kinds of cases they had worked on and litigated, were all very much oriented to a public interest background. I mean, you didn't go to Rutgers if you were interested in doing investment banking or that area of law. So I think the key of Rutgers was the relationships that I was able to build, not only with faculty but with my colleagues and students, that have paid dividends over and over again in my career. I don't think that I would have reached the levels that I had I not had the kind of contact with people.
As an attorney who deals with ethics issues, it can be assumed that you're familiar with legal issues and ethical violations. Yeah. With that said, why doesn't the county prosecutor's office and the state attorney general office take as prominent of a role in prosecuting and investigating public officials as the U.S. Attorney's Office does?
I think the U.S. Attorney's Office has a much stronger ability to bring in the kind of information that's necessary to build indictments. They spread themselves along. They have a long history of dealing with public corruption in this state. I mean, when you look at Harrison Williams and Abscam, Harrison Williams was a senator here in New Jersey. They have a much deeper tradition and the resources, and there's also a level at which they are the federal government and they're far removed from the day-to-day politics that you see. It's hard to police yourself. It's hard to police the people who help you get to the place that the internal political structure. I mean, it's a political position. But I think that we're turning the corner in that area. I know that the governor's office has dedicated a significant amount of resources to develop the kinds of cases that are going to yield convictions. One of the things that I know Attorney General Milgram is committed is not to just bring cases for the purpose of bringing cases. You have to bring good cases. In order to bring good cases, take time. And I think that the U.S. Attorney's Office has really had the benefit of that time to develop the kinds of cases and develop the information that's going to lead to these kinds of convictions. I mean, sometimes people actually walk into your office and tell you, by the way, I know that you're looking for these types of cases. Here I know information. There's always somebody, an ex-wife, ex-girlfriend. Yeah, they come into an office and will volunteer information. People that accrue significant enemies in political life. They're their political enemies will be. If you checked into the average prosecutor's office, you would be amazed at how many times they turn away people with unreliable information. So it really takes a lot of professionalism, a lot of discretion, and building cases is not an easy thing. But I think that the U.S. Attorney's Office has had the benefit of a much stronger reputation in that area.
Now, you have extraordinary amount of experience in
Right.
previous government posts, and now with your current position. So as vice chairman of the State Ethics Commission, how do you feel that your experience in this position has helped you?
Well, I can give you, it's helped me personally in a lot of ways. One is that it has made me passionate about the need to work on these ethical issues, to maintain the kind of attention that they require, to understand them on a deeper level, you know, and to understand what are the pieces that fall together that make for a good public servant. The issue of public trust and the fiduciary responsibility. And I've seen these abused in so many different occasions that you know, I'm impassioned when I talk to young people about remaining idealistic and committed to their own principles about what's right and what's wrong, and trying to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. My generation, you know, the generation of the 70s, was the loudest by far, the most. I mean, we overcommitted and we overpromised and underdelivered. Let's speak. So I can only leave it to students like the ones here at Ryder and students across this country to bring back the meaning to public trust and to forge ahead with creating a better world.
What role does higher education have in ethical training?
Don't get me started, but I'm already there. I think that higher education has a critical responsibility. During my speech, I spoke about the U.S. Attorney saying we can't prosecute our way out of this problem. There aren't enough jails, that we don't have enough money to prosecute everyone. Higher education, I think, owes a duty to the public to empower people with the tools to meet their ethical responsibilities, whether it's as, you know, lawyers, doctors, nurses, social workers. In every position today that we face, with the degree of complexity of everything we do, with the legal panoply of regulations and statutes, people need to have an awareness, and they need to bring to the table a strong background in ethics. And the only way you can meet that task is by discussing ethics in a safe environment, not when you're at the switches at a major company, or when you're, you know, the controller for the state or something of that nature, but to have us discuss and talk about what are those ethical questions that concern us, what are the right decisions. As I said before, a lot of times in government we have, you know, we have two courses that are left, and they're both bad. Okay, but you have to be able to weigh risk. You have to be able to weigh the consequences, the long-term decision making. And I don't know that we are preparing our students, that the fact that ethics education is not a requirement before you receive a degree from most major universities in this country and graduate programs is really a statement on, you know, you only get what you produce. And if you're not emphasizing and allowing people to really have a dialogue in these important areas where they will, as I said earlier, I said people will make thousands of decisions in their career that may impact on them individually, their families, but on other people. And we need to ensure they have a strong ethical foundation. I think universities are the place to do it.
You know, and you've also mentioned that
Right.
parents educating children about ethics from day one
Right.
during their childhood. What do you think can be done on the state level to kind of instill this trend of ethics training?
Well, we have done that. The administration, part of Governor Corzine's effort to turn the ethics climate around in state government was to empower the State Ethics Commission to bring on a training officer, and not only to place ethics officers in each agency, but to ensure that the agencies themselves are doing the training, and also to ensure that we have compliance. So we also have a state compliance officer who goes out to the various agencies to take the temperature around how that agency is doing. Leadership is critical. Unless we don't want to talk about these things when we're seeing our local public official being dragged away in handcuffs, to the federal, in and out of the federal court. We want to talk about these issues beforehand, and we want to be able to take active and multidimensional approaches. And I think what Governor Corzine has brought to the table, and he's asked us to do, is not only ensuring that we have the infrastructure to make sure that waste and inefficiency are eradicated through the controller's office, empowering the State Ethics Commission with training, with ensuring that we have compliance, and transparency is important, so that people see the outcomes, because there has to be a deterrent effect to these kinds of things. But the range of issues is as simple as a contractor taking you out to lunch and buying you meals all the time. I mean, and then all of a sudden, the contractor, he's only buying you meals because he's interested in you either, changing results on a particular audit or doing this, X, Y, Z. But we need to ensure that employee knows that it's not all right to accept that meal, and that we need to make sure that that's an internal value. On the other side, we have business. We procure $1.6 billion worth of goods and services a year. Businesses need to understand that that there are certain things that may be acceptable in the general strain of business dealings that are unacceptable in government dealing. And to that extent, we've created a business ethics guide that is given to everyone who's doing business with the state. So we're moving ahead with some aggressive things that I think will change the climate. Still have a lot of work to do in local ethics and legislative ethics.
Now, obviously all this has to do with the State Ethics Commission that's been created, but what would you say the main role is of the State Ethics Commission?
The main role is to to be the foundation of creating an ethical climate in the state through training, through its advisory opinions, through enforcement, and through proactive measures to ensure that that all our actions are ethical in government.
And what kind of recent work has been done with the State Ethics Commission?
Well, we have increased our penalties from $500 maximum to $10,000. And that begins to get people's attention, a $10,000 penalty for an ethical violation. We have also, trained people within the ethics officers are brought in on a regular basis to discuss issues in the agencies. We're in the process of trying to train our 70,000 person workforce in ethics. But it's also important the quality of people that we have on our ethics commission. We have 3 government members and 4 public members. And that interchange of the government and the public members, and we have, as I said today, Professor Paula Francesi of Seton Hall University is the chairperson of the State Ethics Commission. She brings a vast knowledge. She worked on the Special Counsel report, which was the foundation for most ethics reform in this state. We have a former Attorney General, John Farmer, State Senator Bill Schluter. So it's the quality of those appointees. I sit with 3 other cabinet members who are just very professional and very well versed on the kinds of things, because it's not simple to, it's all in the nuances of what we're trying to do. And we do not want to put ourselves in a position that in the pursuit of ethics we shut down government. Government has a lot of responsibilities, from feeding people to mailing out income tax checks. So we have to make sure. So I think that what the commission has is a very unique balance of an exchange of ideas that helps us come to the right result. And we've had everything from people taking meals to higher level officials voting on contracts where their friends are involved, where they should have recused themselves. But the range of behavior is what you think that people who are in high level positions would know better, and sometimes they don't. They either disregard the risk, or they don't. They just, in certain instances, maybe don't care. But again, why are we in government? Why do we want to serve people? Why are we involved in these critical issues of the time that we live in if we don't care, if we can't demonstrate that we're capable of maintaining the public trust?
Now the penalty, the $10,000 penalty that you mentioned, does it depend on what kind of violation it is?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's a range. So what tends to happen is, each particular instance that you're involved is a singular incident. And then, so if you multiply it, if you voted on 10 contracts, you might turn around and be liable for, we may fine you $5,000 per vote. That might come out to $20,000. So.
Oh, okay. So it could even be over $10,000.
Right.
Okay. And now before that, it was changed, what was the...
It was only $500, so no one really paid attention to it.
Unbelievable.
Right.
Well, it's good that they changed it.
Well,
now the State Senator Wayne Bryant is an example of, an official who gave his constituents what they wanted as far as port barrel spending projects and a variety of different things. And I guess sometimes the constituents tend to kind of turn a blind eye because they trust him. And, do you feel that citizens of the state are doing enough to hold their elected officials accountable?
Well, I think that first I'm not, I don't want to comment on Mr. Bryan. He's presumed innocent, but till proven guilty. But at the same time, I think that without, the low levels of involvement tell you why we're facing the kinds of issues that we're facing. I mean, you have to be active, you have to be engaged, we have to question, and we have to ask for more from our public officials, from our elected officials. And they have to realize that it is a public trust and that more is expected of them. And I think that maybe our expectations have not been high enough in certain instances.
A lot of people complain that, they mistrust government, and a lot of times that keeps them home during election day, and they don't go to the polls. So, I wonder what you think about the role of state government in educating.
Remember, I mean, you can only you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, is the famous quote. But given that, I think that the issues that we're facing with property tax reform are of such grave importance in a state where the cost of living is just tremendously, we're between New York and Philadelphia. I don't think you can get any higher. And as citizens, we need to be involved and we need to be informed. The problem is that we're busy people. We live in a state where, I myself I'm a parent. I'm not home before 6:30, dinner 7:30, 9 o'clock, put the kids to bed. So there isn't the kind of time, the pressures that people live with today, but we can't leave it to other people, because that's when we get in trouble, when we entrust it in the hands of people who are not questioned, who see the path of governing as a means to personal enrichment. And we have to be more aware. We have to be more active. We have to work hard to ensure that we're understanding what our candidates stand for, whether what their voting record is. Are they showing up for votes? There's any number of things, but the critical factor that impacts on generally in high levels of public corruption is low levels of public involvement. So they go hand in hand.
It's a good point, because a lot of people tend to, if their personality is to lie, to steal.
Right.
There's only so much the state government
can't. But that's why I keep getting back to the higher educational system, to challenge and to require the kind of ethics, to putting ethics on the front burner. Because the folks that we see that lie, cheat, and steal, that are, they start when, they may filter funds away from a student organization, they may cheat on exams. It's a pattern that grows over a period of time. And, they're generally not known for personal honesty. And the fact is that unless we are working hard in our educational system to build those values, and to you may be in a student organization caring enough to call somebody on that kind of behavior and saying that it's detrimental, and because that's the same person that maybe 15 years from now may be the head of a major corporation, may be involved in a scandal like Enron, which deprives people. So I think it's up to, we have to be the ethics leaders. We have to, through our models and just caring about those kinds of things.
And how did you evolve into becoming the vice chairman of the State Ethics Commission?
I was appointed by the governor. It wasn't a great evolution, but it occurred. I think because I served in the past on the previous ethics commission, and I think it's my vast experience in government in many different positions. Some people might say that's a bad thing because I can't hold down a job in one agency, but from the other standpoint, I think I have a very informed perspective on the operations of government, and from everything from having been, a public defender in a courtroom dealing with criminal cases, all the way dealing with auto insurance, child welfare, civil rights, and many other kinds of things. So I think the breadth of my experience allows me a lot of to reality test a lot of the circumstances that people find themselves in.
What's the best tool in your mind to fight government corruption?
The best tool, it's multidimensional. It's not one tool. It is putting it on the front burner, talking about it, insisting on higher standards for our public and elected officials. And, the quality of appointments is very key, because I think if we use the kind of scrutiny I think that I've seen in this administration, Governor Corzine, in our appointments process, is to ensure that we're ruling out conflicts, that people with those kinds of conflicts, where they deal with interested parties in their prior life on a regular basis, need to be scrutinized, because it's very difficult to all of a sudden not have friends. And when you're doing good work, you're generally ticking off both sides of the coin. When you're making good decisions, there's always somebody who's going to be dissatisfied. So I think it's important to just look at people of principle who want to lead and who understand the public trust.
And with a political official making a decision, or even someone who's appointed to a post, and you said both decisions have bad
in many situations.
How do you personally deal with those kind of things?
I generally use a risk-benefit analysis. I try to look at the risks of making. I also try to see where the greater, and this is not only this, I don't want to be astute, but to think about the greater, not astute, but I don't want to take this this is not an original thought, is what I mean. You want to look at the greater good in all your decisions. How do you serve the greatest amount of people with the best decision possible and minimize the damage that you might do in implementing a particular policy? The greatest good, if you're following the greatest good rule, you'll always come up with a good decision. Now, there are decisions where you have to defend the minority because it's an important principle that's at stake. And the majority is not going to be happy about that, particularly if it means the majority yielding authority, influence, or interest to a minority. So, you really have to I have taken positions in my life that have been very unpopular. And there are times when, you pay for that. You pay for it in many ways. But I think that if you can sleep at night, and I sleep pretty well, you're probably, that inner compass is in the right direction.
What kind of consequences, if you wanted to elaborate, did you suffer if you made a tough decision, on a certain issue?
Your phone is going to ring forever, with people letting you know how they feel. It's probably one of but I think it's you're not as popular. We all thrive on a certain affirmation by other people, affirming us as smart, as reasonable, as all of the kinds of things. Sometimes when that's taken away from you, you are your life can be pretty lonely. As Bill Clinton said, if you want a friend in Washington, get a dog. That was his famous quote. But I think in the long term, you may in the short term offend some people, but in the long term, when the body of your decision making is examined, people will always feel that you were fair. And that's what I think. We all have to live for the body of our work when, it's examined, whether you're, 22, 32, or 82. It's when they take everything that you've done, what's the story that's going to be told? Is it going to be told that you are a quality individual who has values and principles and will fight for what you think is right? Or, are you just a go along to get along kind of person? I'd rather be the former than the latter.
Now, a specific issue that's been getting a lot of coverage is dual office holding.
Yeah, sure.
What are your thoughts specifically on that issue?
Well, first of all, we've all talked. This is a complex issue. You're talking about breaking with tradition in a state where, dual office holding has been around for ages. I think that what the governor was able to accomplish recently with the legislation banning dual office holding, but yet grandfathering in certain legislators, was a significant accomplishment. He was not happy that he couldn't get a total ban on dual office holding, but politics is a business of consensus, of sometimes yielding in order to achieve another example of achieving the greater good. Had he held out, maybe we would have seen nothing. In reaching out and reaching a compromise on dual office holding that allowed certain, that waived certain requirements for the time being to existing dual office holders, I think we were able to get we didn't get the whole pie, but we got most of what we wanted. Mm-hmm. But the critical issue with dual office holding is not what the governor does or what the law does. It's what the individual does. And if the individual feels that they can hold 3 jobs, I have to wonder how. Okay? I mean, again, government cannot legislate good, sound judgment and quality leadership and all of the things that build an individual. I personally would not want to be a legislator, would not, if I were a legislator, would not want to hold 3 jobs. Right. I thought that I would think that it would not have credibility, that it would go against the kinds of principles that we're talking about here. First of all, I couldn't be in 3 places at once. It's pretty hard for me to get to one place at a time. But, there is the other side of the coin that public life has tremendous, involves tremendous sacrifice. It involves sacrifice from family. It involves, but at the same time, it's got to pass the smell test. Again, going back to those core beliefs that you have, that you are not going to turn around and do anything that you think you couldn't justify or read about in the paper. I think the people that hold, now there is the other side of the coin where there's been significant benefits that the dual office holders have brought back to their communities that wouldn't be the case. And there's a significant kind of knowledge and that people are positioned to get when they are, a mayor and an assemblyman or a mayor and a senator. But, we've got to look on balance of what the particular practice does to destroy the credibility of many of our leaders. I mean, maybe this means that we need to have a full-time legislature because these jobs are full-time. Mm. Although they're slated as part-time, you talk to any legislator, they're working full-time. But so I think, again, using that risk, that benefit and cost-benefit analysis, the cost of dual office holding outweighs the benefit of maintaining it. But it's all about no one forces people to hold dual offices. It's the individual, again, that has to think about themselves and their credibility in their own community.
Do you see more being done on this issue?
I think so. I think as we see it evolve in the future, there will probably be less people that will be dual office holding. I mean, first of all, there's a ban that's coming into effect, and but I think that again, the smell test, public pressure, the key is really going. I think the key to this whole issue with regard to public officials is going to be the next election. The legislature's up. Let's see what the participation rate is, how angry people are, They may be satisfied with the status quo. Some people can live with the status quo.
Now, you mentioned some of the benefits,
Right.
some of the negatives of the
Right.
dual office holding. But, other than them having, their foot in
Both places,
both
right.
places, what other, negatives can come out of that?
Well, I'll first deal. The positives are that you are going to, that there's a lot of information and a lot of knowledge that's gained. We are a state of home rule, 566 municipalities, so we're much more complicated. The cost of it is really that we're not giving enough opportunities for others to come into the political realm. When one person holds all the power, what is it? Absolute power corrupts absolutely, or something of that nature. Again, too much power concentrated in one place and one person leads to the kind of breakdown in democracy and the kind of breakdown in public ethics that we see that occurs. So I think that, again, in many of the cases that we see that involve public corruption are dual office holders. So I think we need to really, it puts them in a susceptibility to to ethical issues. So I think that's a big problem.
And last but not least, other than, fighting these issues as they come about, or a specific senator, state senator, for example, who has, a problem as far as an ethical violation, what else is being done prematurely in the future for, taking care of these ethics issues?
Keeping the dialogue alive, and I think the governor, the office of the controller, when that begins to take shape, will make for some important changes. I think the concentration, we need to take another look at local ethics on the local level, and what mechanisms can be in place to do more training with local officials, and to, again, create an ethics consciousness. With the legislature, I think there's the Legislative Ethics Commission that they have. That needs to be revitalized, and they're having a lot of problems working that out, because obviously it's, bringing everybody to the table to agree on what the right thing to do is very hard. So I think it's going to be active in the future.
Now, with local ethics, will that involve someone getting down on the grassroots level and taking care of things, or?
You know what? The grassroots level can create two things. I've seen grassroots level lead to great change, but I've also seen in some cases at the grassroots level to lead to just total dysfunctionality and impasse, because the allegations become so personal that you never get to the foundation of it. And some local campaigns in New Jersey are leagues worse than state campaigns, if you read the literature and you read the paper every day. But we have to find common ground. We have to be able to really reach out and look at, well, what are the pillars of what we're building here? And the pillars, again, are public trust, the fiduciary responsibility of people in public office to take their role in responsible and in an ethical manner.
All right. Well,
That's great.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's all the time we have for our show today. I'm Nicholas Balassi, and thanks for watching.